Police in Ontario are calling on drivers to be better over the holiday season. New numbers show impaired driving is on the rise in the province. Police say more than 10,000 charges have been laid this year, a 16% increase over 2022. The number of crashes related to impaired driving is also up. And there have been approximately 1,800 this year, according to police, a 10% increase over last year's total. For more on this, we are now joined by Steve Sullivan. He's the CEO of Mothers Against Drunk Driving Canada. Thanks for joining us this morning, Steve. Now, Steve, what do you think is factoring into this increase that Ontario is seeing this year?
Well, I think there might be a couple different explanations. One might be that, 2023 might be the first year since the pandemic that people are, there's no restrictions, people are more comfortable being out, social, that kind of thing. That might have some impact. I also think the tools and the more proactive work of police in terms of using mandatory alcohol screening, which means that police can demand a breath sample from any driver they've lawfully stopped, whether that's at a, you ran a red light or you have a broken taillight or they stop you at a sobriety check. They can demand that you provide a breath sample. And they're much better trained and better able to detect drug impaired drivers. People often don't think they can, but they're much better able to do that. Those things might play some role in the numbers, but I do think whatever the numbers are, whether they're the same or up, what they tell us is there's too many people on the road who are driving impaired.
Now, these numbers that we're talking about are Ontario specific, but what can you tell me about some of the national statistics and things that you're seeing across the country?
We haven't seen the other numbers like from other provinces. In terms of, I saw, in Saskatchewan for the month of November, they had 422, which for a province of that size is concerning. I expect what we're hearing from law enforcement, I expect we'll see is that other provinces are seeing an increase as well. We know that Alberta, for example, is the most aggressive province in terms of using mandatory alcohol screening. They ask a lot of drivers to provide a sample, and the more drivers you ask, the more drivers you will catch. So I suspect we'll see this trend in other provinces as well.
Now, are there any other factors that could be weighing into this increase, societal, or, the legalization? Just what are you seeing weighing into this?
Well, I think we have seen probably an increase since legalization in terms of drug impaired driving, although it was on the rise long before legalization. So what that impact has been, I'm not sure we can say, but there probably has been some. I also think, coming out of the pandemic, I think the risk-taking behavior that people had, and social scientists will study this for years to come, but not even just in terms of impaired driving, but in terms of street racing and stunt driving. I think police have seen increases in those as well. So I think those things might play a role. I also think most people just don't think they're going to get caught. They don't think that they certainly don't think they're going to get into a crash. And I think that everybody assumes it's not going to be them that's on the news, because they've caused a crash or been hit by an impaired driver. The reality is hundreds of people are killed every year and thousands more injured. So it happens to someone. And I think we all have to be cognizant of the safety on our roads.
Mm-hmm. You talked about some of the training that officers have undergone to be able to recognize this stuff. So do you think that a higher police presence is also weighing into this, or what are you hearing around that?
I think clearly that sometimes the charges for impaired drivers often reflects the proactive work of police. If, for example, and I'm not saying police would ever do this, if, for example, police service said, we're not going to enforce any road safety this month, you would see impaired driving charges drop to zero. But if they said, we're this month, as we're seeing in December and November and into January, we're going to make impaired driving a real priority. We're doing more sobriety checks. You're going to see the numbers increase. So a lot of the charges reflect the activities of police. And in terms of training, if they're better able to detect people who are driving impaired by drugs, then they're going to catch more of those individuals as well. I think we get caught up in the numbers, and obviously they can tell us what the trends are and they're important. Whether they're up this year or the same as last year, what they do tell us is that too many people are still making those choices to drive impaired and putting everybody else on the road at risk.
Great. Thanks so much for that, Steve. Good to keep in mind, especially ahead of New Year's right around the corner. And you are watching CBC News Network.